She just wanted to get home after a tiring day, but a small gesture changed everything. Without knowing, she helped someone who was hiding a big secret. The truth came to light unexpectedly, shaking everything she believed in. But some stories need big twists. Before you discover this emotional story, subscribe to the channel for more unforgettable tales. She boarded the bus, feeling the weight of another exhausting day. Her simple clothes and worn-out sneakers reflected the arduous routine of long hours, serving coffee and studying at university. The air conditioning barely worked, and the stuffy environment only increased her fatigue. With her head leaning against the foggy window, her thoughts drifted back home, where her mother waited with an improvised meal made from the little that remained in the refrigerator. Emily sighed deeply, adjusting the worn backpack on her lap. At 22, she felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. She worked as a waitress at a coffee shop in downtown New York to pay for her law studies and help with household expenses. Her mother, Mrs. Patricia, was battling a chronic illness that prevented her from working, leaving Emily as the family's sole provider. The noise of the city invaded the bus through the partially open windows. The chaotic traffic on Fifth Avenue made the vehicle advance slowly, prolonging the journey back home to the Queens neighborhood. Emily closed her eyes for a moment, allowing herself a brief rest. Her mind wandered to the day's events. The shift at the coffee shop had been particularly busy, with impatient customers and a bad-tempered manager. Afterward, she had rushed to college, where she faced a difficult civil law exam. Now, exhausted, she just wanted to get home, take a hot shower, and fall into bed. The silence of her exhaustion was interrupted by a commotion at the bus entrance. A young man with a refined appearance was arguing with the driver, visibly embarrassed about not having money to pay the fare. His elegant posture and brand-name clothes set him apart from the other passengers. He checked his pockets repeatedly, but his cell phone was dead and his wallet forgotten. Emily observed the scene with curiosity. The young man, who appeared to be around 25, was clearly out of his element. His well-tailored suit and Italian shoes contrasted with the modest environment of public transportation. She noticed the look of desperation in his brown eyes as he tried unsuccessfully to convince the driver to let him board. Without hesitation, Emily stood up and walked to the front of the bus. "I'll pay his fare," she said, taking some coins from her pocket. The driver looked at her with surprise but accepted the money without questioning. The young man turned to Emily, his eyes wide with surprise and gratitude. "Thank you so much," he murmured, seeming genuinely touched by the gesture. I don't know how to thank you." Emily shrugged, offering a small smile. "No need to thank me. I've been through tough situations and know what it's like." The young man nodded, still looking a bit lost. Emily returned to her seat, and he settled a few rows ahead. Every now and then she caught him looking back, as if wanting to say something more, but he always quickly averted his gaze when their eyes met. As the bus continued its route, Emily couldn't help but think about the strange encounter. There was something intriguing about that young man, something that went beyond his elegant appearance and the embarrassment of the situation. She wondered what someone like him would be doing on a regular bus on a Wednesday night. Her thoughts were interrupted when the bus stopped at her stop. Emily stood up, adjusting her backpack. As she passed by the young man, their eyes met again. He opened his mouth as if to say something, but Emily was already descending the steps of the bus. The cool night air greeted her when she stepped onto the sidewalk. Emily took a deep breath, feeling the fatigue weighing even more heavily on her shoulders. The familiar street of her neighborhood stretched out before her, illuminated by the yellowish light of the street lamps. She began walking toward the complex of public housing where she lived, her thoughts still lost in the strange encounter on the bus. Upon arriving home, she found Mrs. Patricia dozing on the sofa, the television tuned to a cooking show. Emily smiled tenderly, covering her mother with a blanket before heading to the small kitchen. As expected, there was little in the refrigerator. She improvised a sandwich and ate in silence, observing the city through the window of the 10th floor apartment. As she prepared for bed, Emily couldn't help but think about the man from the bus. There was something in his eyes, a mixture of vulnerability and curiosity that intrigued her. She shook her head, pushing these thoughts away. She would probably never see him again, and she had more important things to worry about. The next morning, Emily woke up early as usual. She prepared a quick coffee for herself and left breakfast ready for her mother. With a kiss on Mrs. Patricia's forehead, who was still sleeping, she left for another day of work. The coffee shop where she worked was on the ground floor of a commercial building in the Fifth Avenue area. It was a small establishment, but always busy, frequented mainly by executives and employees from nearby offices. Emily arrived punctually at 7 a.m., put on her apron, and began preparing the coffee machines for another busy day. The first hours of the morning passed in a blur of coffee orders, cheese breads, and sandwiches. Emily moved efficiently between the tables, her professional smile never faltering, even when confronted with grumpy or demanding customers. It was around 10 a.m., when the coffee shop's rush was beginning to subside, that the doorbell rang, announcing the entrance of a new customer. Emily, busy cleaning a table, automatically looked up to welcome them. Her heart skipped a beat when she recognized the face of the man from the bus. He looked different today, wearing more casual clothes, a polo, shirt and jeans, but still maintained an aura of distinction. His eyes scanned the environment until they found hers, and a shy smile formed on his lips. Emily felt her cheeks warm and quickly lowered her gaze, pretending to be busy cleaning the table. When she finally gathered the courage to look again, the young man was already seated at a table near the window, studying the menu attentively. Taking a deep breath to compose herself, Emily walked to his table. "Good morning," she said, trying to keep her voice steady. "What would you like?" The young man looked at her, his eyes shining with recognition. "Hi," he replied, seeming a bit nervous. I wanted to thank you again for yesterday. It was very kind of you." Emily felt the blush return to her cheeks. "It was nothing, really," she murmured, averting her gaze. "Have you decided what you'll order?" He nodded, seeming a bit disappointed with the change of subject. "A cappuccino, please, and a cheese bread." Emily wrote down the order and quickly walked away, feeling his gaze on her back. While preparing the cappuccino, she couldn't help but cast furtive glances toward the table. The young man seemed lost in thought, his fingers drumming distractedly on the table. When she returned with the order, Emily noticed that he had taken a laptop out of his bag and was typing something with concentration. She placed the cup and the plate on the table, trying not to disturb him. "Thank you," he said, looking at her with a smile. "By the way, my name is Nathan." Emily hesitated for a moment before responding. "Emily," she said simply, offering a small smile in return. Nathan seemed to want to say something more, but at that moment another customer called Emily's attention. She apologized with a nod and returned to work, but she couldn't help but notice that Nathan remained in the coffee shop for hours, occasionally ordering more coffee and casting glances in her direction. When he finally stood up to leave, it was already past noon. Nathan left a generous tip and a folded note under the plate. Emily, curious and a little apprehensive, waited until he left to read the note. "Emily, I would like to be able to talk more with you. If you're interested, I'll be here tomorrow at the same time. Nathan." Emily folded the note and put it in her apron pocket, her heart beating a little faster. She didn't know what to think about this unusual situation, but she couldn't deny that she was intrigued. Who was Nathan really, and why did he seem so interested in her? The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Emily finished her shift at the coffee shop, rushed to college, and after classes, took the bus back home. During all this time, her thoughts kept returning to Nathan and his mysterious note. At home, while preparing a simple dinner for herself and her mother, Emily wondered if she should show up to talk with Nathan the next day. Part of her was curious, eager even, to get to know him better, but another part hesitated, mindful of the obvious differences between them and the complications that could arise. "Is everything okay, sweetie?" Mrs. Patricia's voice pulled her from her reverie. "You seem distracted." Emily smiled at her mother, serving the plates of pasta. "Everything's fine, Mom, just tired from the day." But as they ate in silence, Emily couldn't stop thinking about Nathan and what the next day might bring. She knew she was on the verge of something that could change her life, for better or worse. The question was she ready to take that step? The next morning, Emily woke up with a mixture of anxiety and expectation. Nathan's note weighed on her mind as she prepared for another day of work. She dressed with a little more care than usual, choosing a blue blouse that highlighted her eyes and tying her brown hair in a neat ponytail. "You look pretty today, sweetie," commented Mrs. Patricia, observing Emily with curiosity. "Any special occasion?" Emily felt her cheeks flush. "No, Mom, just woke up wanting to spruce myself up a bit." Mrs. Patricia raised an eyebrow, but didn't push the subject. Emily kissed her mother on the cheek and hurried out, her heart beating a little faster than normal. The path to work seemed longer than ever. Emily alternated between the excitement of seeing Nathan again and the fear of creating too many expectations. After all, she barely knew him. Maybe he wouldn't even show up. Upon arriving at the coffee shop, Emily immersed herself in the familiar routine of opening the establishment and preparing everything for the day. The morning rush kept her busy, but her eyes couldn't stop turning to the door each time the bell rang. At 10 o'clock sharp, Nathan entered. He was dressed casually again, with a white shirt and jeans. His eyes scanned the environment until they found Emily, and a smile illuminated his face. "Good morning," he said, approaching the counter where she was. "You came." Emily couldn't help but smile back. "Well, I work here, so—" Nathan laughed, running his hand through his hair in a gesture that Emily was beginning to recognize as a sign of nervousness. "Yeah, of course, I meant, well, you understood." There was an awkward moment of silence before Emily asked, "What would you like today?" "Oh yes, a cappuccino, please, and do you have a moment to talk?" Emily looked around. The coffee shop was relatively quiet at that moment. "I can take a quick break in a few minutes," she replied. "Meet me at that corner table?" Nathan nodded, seeming relieved, and headed to the indicated table. Emily prepared the cappuccino, trying to calm her nerves. What did Nathan want to talk about, and why was she so anxious about it? Minutes later, after asking a colleague to cover for her for a moment, Emily joined Nathan at the table. He smiled when she sat down, his fingers nervously tapping the cup. "So," Emily began, not knowing quite what to say. "So?" Nathan echoed, laughing nervously. "Look, I know this might seem strange. We barely know each other, but there's something about you that intrigues me, Emily. Since that day on the bus, I can't stop thinking about you." Emily felt the heat rise to her cheeks. "Nathan, Wait, let me finish," he said hastily. "I know we probably seem to come from different worlds, and maybe that's true, but I'd like to have the chance to get to know you better. No pressure, no expectations, just talk. What do you think?" Emily studied Nathan's face, looking for signs of falsehood or ulterior motives, but all she saw was sincerity and a vulnerability. That surprised her. "All right," she heard herself saying, "we can talk, but I have to get back to work now." Nathan's face lit up. Of course. How about we meet after your shift? I know a quiet cafe not far from here." Emily hesitated for a moment, thinking of her mother waiting at home, of her college assignments, but something inside her urged her to accept. "Okay, I finish at 5 p.m. "Great. I'll wait for you out front then." With a last smile, Emily returned to work, her mind spinning with possibilities and questions. Who was Nathan really? What did he want with her? And why, despite all her reservations, did she feel so drawn to him? The rest of the day passed in a blur of activity. Emily served customers, cleaned tables, and prepared coffee automatically, her mind always returning to the impending meeting with Nathan. At 5 p.m. sharp, after changing clothes and saying goodbye to her colleagues, she left the coffee shop with her heart racing. Nathan was waiting, as promised, leaning against a silver sports car that seemed absurdly out of place on that busy street in downtown New York. Seeing her, his face lit up with a smile. "Hi," he said, seeming genuinely happy to see her. "Ready?" Emily nodded, suddenly feeling nervous. Nathan opened the passenger door for her, a gesture that caught her by surprise. As she settled into the soft leather seat, Emily couldn't help but notice the stark contrast between this luxurious car and the crowded bus where they had met. The cafe that Nathan chose was, indeed, quiet and welcoming. Located on a side street, away from the bustle of the main avenue, the place had an intimate atmosphere, with soft lights and discreet background music. Seated at a corner table, with steaming cups in front of them, Emily and Nathan faced each other for a moment, both seeming to not know exactly how to start. "So," Nathan finally broke the silence, "tell me about yourself, Emily. What do you do besides working at the coffee shop?" Emily took a sip of her tea before answering. "I study law. I'm in my 3rd year." Nathan's eyes widened with genuine interest. "Law? That's fascinating. What area do you plan to pursue?" "I'm not sure yet," Emily admitted, "but I'm very interested in human rights and social causes." Nathan smiled. "That suits you. From the little I know, you seem to be someone who cares about others." Emily felt her cheeks warm with the compliment. "And you, Nathan, what do you do for a living?" For a brief moment, a shadow seemed to pass over Nathan's face, but it was so quick that Emily thought she might have imagined it. "I work with business," he replied vaguely. "Actually, I'm at a moment of transition in my career, looking for something more meaningful." Emily nodded, feeling that there was more to this story than Nathan was telling. But she decided not to push. After all, they barely knew each other. The conversation flowed surprisingly well after this initial start. They talked about books, discovering a mutual love for Gabriel Garcia Marquez. Music, Nathan loved jazz while Emily preferred indie folk, and their views on life and the world. Time flew, and when Emily looked at the clock, she was shocked to see that it was already past 7 p.m. "Oh my gosh, I need to go," she exclaimed, getting up hastily. "My mother must be worried." Nathan also stood up, seeming genuinely disappointed that the meeting had come to an end. "Can I give you a ride?" Emily hesitated. Part of her wanted to accept, to prolong that moment. But another part, more cautious, reminded her that she still barely knew Nathan. "Thank you, but I'll take the subway," she replied with a soft smile. It was really nice talking with you, Nathan." Nathan nodded, a mix of understanding and disappointment in his eyes. "I enjoyed it a lot too, Emily. Can we see each other again?" Emily bit her lip, thoughtful. Against all logic, she found herself wanting to say yes. There was something about Nathan, a mix of charm, vulnerability, and mystery that intrigued her deeply. "All right," she finally answered, "but let's take it slow, okay?" Nathan's face lit up with a smile. "Of course, at your pace. How about we meet again next week? Same day, same time?" Emily agreed, and with a final smile, left the cafe. As she walked to the subway station, her mind was buzzing. Who was Nathan, really? Why was a man who obviously came from a world so different from hers so interested in getting to know her? And more importantly, why, despite all her reservations and the voice of reason screaming in her head, could she hardly wait to see him again? With these questions echoing in her mind, Emily boarded the crowded subway, her heart divided between the excitement of novelty and the fear of the unknown. Little did she know that this casual encounter was about to change the course of her life in ways she could never have imagined. The days that followed passed in a blur for Emily, between shifts at the coffee shop, classes at college, and caring for her mother. She barely had time to breathe, much less to reflect on her meeting with Nathan. However, in the rare moments of quietude, her thoughts inevitably wandered to that afternoon at the cafe. On Thursday, the eve of the day marked. To meet Nathan again, Emily felt the anxiety grow. She was so distracted during her shift at the coffee shop that she even mixed up the orders of 2 customers, something that rarely happened. "Are you okay, Emily?" asked Jessica, her co-worker, as they cleaned the counter at the end of the shift. "You seem to be in another world today." Emily forced a smile. "I'm fine, just a little tired." Jessica gave her a suspicious look, but didn't insist. Emily silently thanked her friend for her discretion. How to explain something that not even she fully understood? Upon arriving home that night, she found her mother watching a soap opera. On the small living room TV, Mrs. Patricia turned to her with a tired smile. "Hi, sweetie, how was your day?" Emily threw herself on the sofa next to her mother, exhausted. "It was normal," she answered hesitantly. For a moment she considered, telling her mother about Nathan, but something held her back. Perhaps it would be better to wait, to see where this would lead before involving her mother. "Emily," Mrs. Patricia began, her tone serious, catching her daughter's attention. "You know you can tell me anything, don't you?" Emily felt a pang of guilt. Her mother had always been her safe harbor, her confidant. Hiding something from her seemed wrong. "I know, Mom," she replied, forcing a smile. "It's just, there are some things I'm trying to understand first, you know." Mrs. Patricia nodded, understanding. "All right, sweetie, just don't forget that I'm here, okay?" Emily hugged her mother, feeling a wave of affection and gratitude. "I will never forget that, Mom." The next morning, Emily woke up even before the alarm went off. She spent more time than usual choosing her outfit and fixing her hair, something that didn't go unnoticed by Mrs. Patricia. "Are you sure there's nothing special today?" her mother teased, raising an eyebrow. Emily blushed. Just want to feel pretty sometimes, Mum." Mrs. Patricia smiled, but her eyes showed a mixture of concern and curiosity. "You're always pretty, sweetie." The day at the coffee shop seemed to drag on. Emily alternated between moments of anxiety and doubt. What if Nathan didn't show up? What if it was all just an elaborate joke? Or worse, what if he showed up and she realized there was nothing there beyond a passing attraction? At 5 p.m. sharp, Emily left the coffee shop, her heart beating fast. To her surprise and relief, Nathan was already there, leaning against his sports car, a smile lighting up his face when he saw her. "Hi," he said, seeming genuinely happy to see her. "Ready for another cafe?" Emily nodded, suddenly feeling shy. "Sure." This time, Nathan took her to a small bistro in a quiet residential neighborhood. The place was cozy, with rustic wooden tables and plants hanging on the walls. "I hope you don't mind," said Nathan as they sat down. "I thought it would be nice to change the scenery a bit." Emily smiled, appreciating the environment. "It's beautiful here." The conversation flowed naturally, as if they were old friends reuniting. Nathan asked about her studies, listening with genuine interest as Emily talked about her dreams of using law to help less fortunate people. "You're amazing, you know that," he said at one point, his eyes shining with admiration. "The way you balance work, studies, and still take care of your mother. I don't know if I could do all that." Emily felt her cheeks warm with the compliment. "I do what needs to be done," she replied, shrugging. "And you? Tell me more about your work." For a brief instant, Emily noticed a shadow pass over Nathan's face. He hesitated before answering. "Actually," he began, his tone more serious, "there's something I need to tell you, Emily." Emily's heart accelerated. Was this it? The moment when the bubble would burst and she would discover that it was all just an illusion. Nathan took a deep breath before continuing. I haven't been completely honest about who I am." Emily felt the blood freeze in her veins. "What do you mean?" "My full name is Nathan Harrison," he said, his eyes fixed on hers. "My family. Well, let's say we're known in the business world." Emily blinked, confused. The surname Harrison sounded vaguely familiar, but she couldn't remember from where. "Okay," she said slowly. "And why is that something you needed to tell me?" Nathan ran his hand through his hair, a gesture that Emily already recognized as a sign of nervousness. "Because my family owns one of the largest hotel chains in the country, and I am the heir to that empire." The information hit Emily like a punch to the stomach. Suddenly, everything made sense. The expensive car, the designer clothes, the way he seemed out of place on the bus that first day. "Why didn't you tell me before?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Nathan lowered his eyes, seeming genuinely sorry. "Because I wanted you to get to know me for who I am, not for my last name or bank account. Emily, in recent years, I've struggled to find my own path, to be more than just the Harrison heir. When I met you..." It was the first time in a long time that someone saw me, just as Nathan. Emily remained silent for a long moment, processing everything she had just heard. Part of her wanted to get up and leave, feeling betrayed by the omission. But another part, the part that had been charmed by the Nathan she had met in the last few weeks, wanted to understand. "And now?" she finally asked. "What does this mean?" For whatever is happening between us." Nathan reached out across the table, gently touching Emily's fingers. "It means I want you to know me completely. No secrets, no omissions, if you still want to, of course." Emily looked at their joined hands, feeling a confusing mixture of emotions: fear, excitement, doubt, hope. When she raised her eyes to meet Nathan's gaze, she saw in them a vulnerability that touched her deeply. "Okay," she finally said, "let's try this, but with one condition." "Anything," Nathan promptly replied. "Complete honesty from now on. No secrets or half-truths." Nathan smiled, gently squeezing Emily's hand. "I promise." As they left the bistro later, walking side by side under the starry New York sky, Emily felt a mixture of apprehension and expectation. She knew she was entering unknown, potentially dangerous territory. The difference between their worlds was abysmal. However, looking at Nathan, seeing the way he smiled at her, Emily felt a spark of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could build a bridge between these very distinct worlds. What Emily didn't know was that this revelation was just the beginning. The weeks and months that would follow would bring challenges that would test not only her nascent relationship with Nathan, but also her own convictions and values. The journey that was beginning promised to be tumultuous, exciting, and above all, transformative. The weeks that followed brought a series of changes to Emily's life. Her meetings with Nathan became more frequent, and she found herself divided between the excitement of this new relationship and concern about the glaring differences between their worlds. On a Saturday afternoon, about a month after Nathan's revelation, Emily was finishing her shift at the coffee shop when she saw a luxury car park in front of the establishment. Her heart skipped a beat as she recognized Nathan getting out of the vehicle, wearing casual clothes but still clearly expensive. "Hi," he said, smiling as he entered the coffee shop. "I thought I'd surprise you." Emily returned the smile, although she felt a slight discomfort. "Hi, Nathan. I just need to finish cleaning some tables and I'll be ready." While Emily finished her tasks, she noticed the curious looks from her co-workers and some customers. Nathan clearly didn't belong in that environment, and his presence drew attention. After saying goodbye to her colleagues, Emily left with Nathan, feeling strangely self-conscious in her simple work clothes beside him. "So what do you want to do today?" asked Nathan, opening the car door for her. Emily hesitated. "Actually, Nathan, I was thinking, what if we do something simpler today? Maybe we could just walk in the park or something." Nathan seemed surprised but readily agreed. "Sure, whatever you want." They drove to a nearby park, one of the few green spaces in that busy part of the city. As they walked side by side, Emily felt that she needed to address the elephant in the room. "Nathan," she began, carefully choosing her words, "I know we promised honesty with each other, so I need to tell you something." He looked at her with concern. "What is it?" Emily took a deep breath. I feel a bit uncomfortable with the difference between our lives. I know it's not your fault, but sometimes it's hard not to feel inadequate." Nathan stopped walking, turning to face her. "Emily, you should never feel that way. You're amazing exactly as you are." "I know you think so," she replied, "but it's not just about what you think. It's about how I feel when we're in expensive places, or when you show up at the coffee shop in a car that probably costs more than I earn in years." Nathan was silent, for a moment, processing her words. "I'm sorry," he finally said. "I never meant to make you feel uncomfortable. What can I do to improve this?" Emily smiled, touched by his genuine concern. "Could we try to do more simple things together? Get to know a bit of my world too?" "Of course," Nathan promptly responded. "Actually, I'd love that. Sometimes I feel like I live in a bubble, you know. It would be good to see things from a different perspective." In the days that followed, Nathan made a visible effort to adapt to Emily's world. They began to frequent simpler places, like neighborhood diners and street fairs. Nathan seemed genuinely fascinated by these experiences, asking questions and observing everything with curious eyes. One night, about 2 weeks after their conversation in the park, Nathan surprised Emily by showing up at her apartment with ingredients for them to cook together. "I hope you don't find me too presumptuous," he said, looking a bit nervous. "I thought we could do something different today." Emily smiled, feeling a wave of affection for him. "I think it's a great idea, but I should warn you that I'm not exactly a chef." "Neither am I," Nathan laughed. "But we can learn together, right?" The small kitchen of Emily's apartment soon filled with laughter and the aroma of spices. They made quite a mess trying to prepare a simple spaghetti bolognese, but the final result was surprisingly tasty. As they ate, sitting at the small kitchen table, Emily observed Nathan. He seemed perfectly at ease there in that simple apartment, eating from chipped plates and drinking cheap wine from ordinary glass cups. "What are you thinking?" Nathan asked, noticing her gaze. Emily smiled. "Just how happy you seem here. I didn't expect that." Nathan took her hand on the table. "It's because I'm with you, Emily. I realize more and more that all that ostentation, all that luxury, means nothing if you don't have someone special to share it with." Emily's heart raced with these words. She leaned across the table, kissing Nathan softly. It was a moment of perfect harmony, where the differences between their worlds seemed to disappear. However, reality wouldn't take long to impose itself again. The following week, while Emily was studying for an important test, her cell phone rang. It was Nathan, sounding agitated. "Emily, I need to tell you something," he said, his voice tense. "My parents found out about us." Emily's stomach sank. Although Nathan had mentioned his family before, they had never thoroughly discussed how his parents would react to their relationship. "And how did they react?" she asked, fearing the answer. There was a pause on the other end of the line. They want to meet you," Nathan finally replied. "Actually, they're insisting on it. They want you to come to dinner at our house next weekend." Emily felt a wave of panic. Dinner at the Harrison mansion? Her, a waitress and law student of humble origin? "Nathan, I don't know if," she began, but he interrupted her. "Please, Emily, I know it's a lot to ask, but it's important to me. I promise I'll be by your side the whole time." Emily closed her eyes, feeling the weight of this decision. She knew that this moment could change everything. It was a step into a world completely unknown to her, a world of wealth and privileges that had always seemed so distant. "All right," she finally said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I'll go." As she hung up the phone, Emily felt a mixture of fear and determination. The dinner with Nathan's parents would be a test not only for their relationship, but for herself. Could she really be part of this world so different from hers? And more importantly, did she want that? The answers to these questions would have to wait. For now, Emily had a dinner to prepare for, a meeting that could very well define the course of her future with Nathan. The days leading up to the dinner with Nathan's parents were a whirlwind of anxiety for Emily. Between double shifts at the coffee shop and nights of intense study, she barely had time to process what was about to happen. However, the prospect of the meeting constantly hovered in her mind, like a cloud of apprehension. On the eve of the big day, Emily found herself standing in front of the small bathroom mirror in the apartment, staring at her reflection with a mixture of determination and fear. Her mother, Mrs. Patricia, softly knocked on the half-open door. "Sweetie, is everything okay?" Emily turned, forcing a smile. "It is, Mom, just nervous, I guess." Mrs. Patricia entered the bathroom, her eyes full of understanding and concern. "Emily, you know you can tell me anything, right?" At that moment, looking at her mother's gentle face, Emily felt the barriers she had built crumble. Tears began to roll down her cheeks as she opened up, telling everything about Nathan, his family, and the impending dinner. Mrs. Patricia listened in silence, hugging her daughter when she finished. "Oh, my dear," she whispered, "you don't have to face this alone." "But what if I'm not good enough, Mum?" Emily sobbed. "What if they look at me and only see a poor girl who doesn't belong in their world?" Mrs. Patricia held her daughter's face between her hands, her eyes firm. "Emily, listen to me well. You are intelligent, hard-working, and have a heart of gold. If they can't see that, the problem is theirs, not yours." Her mother's words calmed Emily, reminding her of who she was and where she came from. With a trembling sigh, she nodded. "Thank you, Mom." The next day, Nathan arrived to pick her up in his sports car. Emily had chosen a simple but elegant dress that she had bought especially for the occasion. Seeing her, Nathan's eyes lit up. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing her softly. During the journey to the Harrison mansion, Nathan tried to calm Emily's nerves, telling funny stories from his childhood and assuring her that everything would be fine. However, when the car passed through the imposing gates of the property, Emily felt her stomach sink. The mansion was even more impressive than she had imagined. With its neoclassical architecture and meticulously maintained gardens, it seemed to have come straight out of a movie. Emily took a deep breath, trying to calm herself as Nathan parked the car. "Ready?" he asked, gently squeezing her hand. Emily nodded, unable to find her voice. Together they walked to the main entrance, where they were greeted by a butler with an austere appearance. "Good evening, Mr. Nathan," the man said, his tone formal. "Your parents await you in the living room." Nathan guided Emily through corridors decorated with expensive artwork and impressive antiques. Finally, they arrived at a spacious room where an elegant couple awaited them. "Mom, Dad," Nathan said, his voice tense but determined. "This is Emily." Mr. James Harrison was a tall, imposing man, with graying hair and shrewd eyes that seemed to evaluate every detail. His wife, Barbara, was an elegant woman, with delicate features that resembled Nathan's. "Welcome, Emily," said Barbara, her voice soft but cautious. "It's a pleasure to finally meet you." "The pleasure is mine, ma'am," Emily replied, mentally thanking that her voice didn't tremble. Mr. Harrison observed Emily for a long moment before speaking. "So, you're the young woman who has been occupying so much of my son's time." Emily felt Nathan tense at her side. "Dad," he began, but Emily gently interrupted him. "Yes, sir," she said, raising her chin and meeting the man's gaze. "Nathan and I have been spending quite a bit of time together." A tense silence followed, broken only when Barbara suggested they move to the dining room. The meal that followed was a surreal experience for Emily. The table was set with fine china and silver cutlery, and the dishes served seemed to have come from a starred restaurant. The conversation flowed in a tense and formal manner. Nathan's parents asked questions about Emily's studies, her work, and her family. Although her answers were polite, Emily could feel the underlying judgment in each question. It was during dessert that things began to unravel. Mr. Harrison, after taking a sip of his expensive wine, looked directly at Emily. "Tell me, Emily," he began, his tone seemingly casual, "what are your true intentions with my son?" Nathan almost choked on his pudding. "Dad, that's completely inappropriate." Emily, however, remained calm. Remembering her mother's words, she straightened her shoulders and looked directly into Mr. Harrison's eyes. "Sir," she began, her voice firm, "my intentions with Nathan are simple. I love him. Not for his name, not for his money, but for the man he is. I know I come from a world different from yours, but that doesn't diminish what I feel or what I have to offer." A stunned silence fell over the table. Nathan looked at Emily with a mixture of surprise and admiration. Barbara seemed to be re-evaluating the young woman in front of her, while Mr. Harrison maintained an unreadable expression. Finally, to everyone's surprise, a small smile formed on the patriarch's lips. "Well," he said, "it seems you have more courage than I expected, young lady." The rest of the night went more smoothly, although there were still moments of tension. When it finally came time to leave, Emily felt emotionally exhausted, but also proud of herself. In the car on the way home, Nathan couldn't stop praising her courage. "You were amazing, Emily," he said, his voice full of admiration. "I've never seen anyone face my father that way." Emily smiled, feeling a mixture of relief and apprehension. "Thank you, Nathan. But what happens now?" Nathan took her hand, kissing it softly. "Now we continue our story together." As the car advanced through the New York night, Emily reflected on the events of the night. She knew that the dinner was just the beginning. There would be more challenges ahead, more moments when their different worlds would collide. But looking at Nathan, seeing the love and determination in his eyes, Emily felt a wave of hope. Maybe, just maybe, they could build a bridge between their worlds, creating something new and beautiful in the process. What Emily didn't know was that the events of that night had triggered a series of events that would test not only her love for Nathan, but also her own convictions and values. The path ahead would be full of surprises, some sweet, others bitter, but all fundamental to shaping the future that awaited them. The weeks following the dinner at the Harrison mansion brought a sense of calm for Emily and Nathan. The couple seemed to have overcome a major obstacle, and this united them even more. However, as often happens in life, this tranquility was just the calm before the storm. On a sunny Saturday afternoon, Emily was studying in her small apartment when she received a message from Nathan. "Need to see you. It's urgent. Can I come over?" Concerned with the tone of the message, Emily immediately responded yes. Half an hour later, Nathan was knocking at her door, looking agitated and a bit pale. "Nathan, what happened?" asked Emily, guiding him to sit on the worn-out sofa in the living room. Nathan ran his hands through his hair, a gesture that Emily already recognized as a sign of nervousness. "Emily, I did something that will change everything." Emily's heart accelerated. "What do you mean?" Nathan took a deep breath before answering. "I resigned from my position in the family company." Emily blinked, trying to process the information. "You... what?" "I can't take it anymore, Emily," Nathan exploded, standing up and beginning to pace back and forth in the small living room. "All that pressure, the expectations, having to be someone I'm not. Since I met you, I realized that there's much more to life than profits and social status." Emily observed him, a mixture of admiration and concern on her face. "Nathan, this is... wow. But are you sure? It's a huge step." Nathan stopped pacing and knelt in front of Emily, taking her hands. "I'm sure. I want to build my own life, Emily. I want to make a real difference, not just be another rich executive." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. She leaned in and kissed Nathan softly. "I'm proud of you," she whispered. "But what did your parents say?" Nathan's face contorted. "They didn't react well. My father threatened to disinherit me. He said that if I leave the company, I'll be on my own." Emily felt a tightness in her chest. "Oh, Nathan, I'm sorry." "Don't be," he said, a determined gleam in his eyes. "For the first time in my life, I feel like I'm doing the right thing." In the days that followed, Nathan's life underwent a radical transformation. He moved from his luxurious penthouse to a modest apartment in the same neighborhood as Emily. He began looking for a job, determined to build his own career from scratch. Emily supported him every step of the way, helping him adapt to a simpler life. She taught him how to use public transportation, how to cook basic meals, and how to manage a limited budget. Nathan, in turn, faced each challenge with a mixture of enthusiasm and humility that only made Emily fall in love with him even more. However, not everything was a bed of roses. The pressure from Nathan's family was constant. His mother, Barbara, called almost daily, begging him to reconsider his decision. His father, on the other hand, maintained an icy silence that weighed on Nathan more than any word could. One night, about 2 months after his decision, Nathan and Emily were having dinner in his small apartment when the phone rang. It was Barbara, sounding agitated. "Nathan, please, you need to come home," she begged. "Your father, he's not well. The stress of this whole situation, the doctors say he needs to calm down or..." Nathan paled, his fork falling onto his plate with a clatter. Emily watched, concerned, as he tried to calm his mother on the phone. When he hung up, Nathan looked lost. "My father is in the hospital," he said, his voice trembling. "Apparently he had a minor heart attack due to stress." Emily immediately stood up, hugging him. "Oh, Nathan, you need to go see him." Nathan nodded, but there was hesitation in his eyes. What if he blames me for this? What if this whole situation makes things worse? Emily held his face between her hands. Nathan, he's your father. Regardless of the differences between you, he needs you now. With a trembling sigh, Nathan agreed. Together they headed to the hospital, where they found Barbara in the waiting room looking years older due to worry. "Oh, Nathan," she sobbed, hugging her son. Then, to Emily's surprise, Barbara turned and hugged her too. "Thank you for bringing him, dear." The hours that followed were tense. Mr. Harrison was stable, but the doctors insisted that he needed to drastically reduce his stress level. When they could finally see him, Nathan entered the room alone at his father's request. Emily waited anxiously outside with Barbara. After what seemed like an eternity, Nathan came out of the room, tears in his eyes but a small smile on his face. "He wants to see you," said Nathan, taking Emily's hand. Surprised, Emily hesitantly entered the room. Mr. Harrison, normally an imposing figure, looked fragile in the hospital bed. However, his eyes still had that shrewd gleam. "Emily," he said, his voice hoarse, "thank you for coming." "Sir, I hope you get better soon," Emily replied, not quite sure what to say. "Mr. Harrison observed her for a moment before speaking. "You know, I always thought I knew what was best for Nathan. But seeing you two together, the way he's changed, maybe I was wrong." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "Sir, Nathan loves you and your family very much. He just wants to find his own path." The patriarch nodded slowly. "I'm beginning to see that now. Perhaps it's time for me to learn to let him go." When Emily left the room, she felt as if a huge weight had been lifted from her shoulders. Nathan was waiting anxiously for her, and she hugged him tightly, feeling that somehow they had turned an important page in their story. In the days that followed as Mr. Harrison recovered, there were many difficult but necessary conversations. The family began, slowly, to rebuild bridges that seemed to have been burned. For Emily and Nathan, it was the beginning of a new chapter. They had faced the storm together and emerged stronger on the other side. However, new challenges awaited them. Nathan's journey to find his place in the world was just beginning, and Emily knew she would be by his side every step of the way. What did the future hold for them? Only time would tell. But one thing was certain: their love, tested by the fire of adversity, had proven to be stronger than any class difference or social expectation. And with that love as a foundation, they were ready to face any obstacle that life might throw in their path. The months following Mr. Harrison's hospitalization were a period of transition and growth for Emily and Nathan. With the reluctant but growing support of his family, Nathan began to chart his own path in the business world, but in a way that aligned more with his values and aspirations. On a sunny Saturday morning, Emily woke up to the sound of Nathan moving around in the small kitchen of her apartment. She smiled, remembering how a few months ago he barely knew how to operate a coffee maker. "Good morning, sleepyhead," Nathan said, entering the bedroom with a tray. "I made breakfast for us." Emily sat up in bed, looking with surprise at the coffee, toast and eggs that looked surprisingly appetizing. "Wow, you're really getting the hang of this," Nathan laughed, sitting next to her. "Well, I had a great teacher." As they ate, Nathan seemed nervous, playing with his food more than eating it. Emily knew him too well not to notice. "What's wrong, Nathan? Is something bothering you?" He took a deep breath before answering. "Actually, I have news. Remember that microcredit project I was developing?" Emily nodded. In recent weeks, Nathan had dedicated himself to creating a program that would offer small loans to entrepreneurs from underprivileged communities, something completely different from what he did in the family company. "Well," he continued, a gleam of excitement in his eyes, "I got some interested investors, but there's a detail. The pilot project would be in a community in the South." Emily felt her heart race. "Nathan, that's incredible. But the South? You mean you would have to move?" Nathan took her hands. "Yes, for a few months at least. Emily, I want you to come with me." The silence that followed was deafening. Emily looked at their intertwined hands, her mind a confusion of emotions. On one hand, she was immensely proud of Nathan and excited about the opportunity. On the other, the idea of leaving her mother, her job, and her studies frightened her. I don't know, Nathan," she finally replied. "It's a huge decision, my mother, college." Nathan nodded, understanding. "I know it's a lot to ask, but think about it, please. We could make a difference together, Emily, and it would only be for a fair few months." The days that followed were an emotional roller coaster for Emily. She had a long talk with her mother, who surprisingly encouraged her to go. "Sweetie," Mrs. Patricia said, "sometimes life presents us with unique opportunities. Don't let fear stop you from taking advantage of them." At college, Emily discovered that she could take some courses remotely and make up for the rest when she returned. Her boss at the coffee shop, though disappointed to lose her, promised that her job would be guaranteed when she returned. A week after Nathan's proposal, Emily met him at the small park where they used to walk. His heart raced when he saw the smile on her face. "I'll go," Emily said simply. Nathan hugged her tightly, spinning her in the air. "You won't regret it, I promise." The following weeks were a whirlwind of preparations. Nathan and Emily packed their lives into a few suitcases, said goodbye to friends and family, and boarded a flight to Miami where the project would be based. Arriving in the Florida capital was quite an experience. The heat, the different accents, the vibrant energy of the city, everything was new and exciting. They settled into a simple but comfortable apartment, close to the community where they would work. The first days were challenging. Emily had to adapt to the new climate, the different food, and the slower pace of life than she was used to in New York. Nathan, in turn, faced the reality of implementing his project, dealing with bureaucracies, community expectations, and the inevitable setbacks. But as the weeks passed, both began to fall in love with the place and the people. Emily volunteered to give tutoring classes to children in the community, while helping Nathan with the administrative part of the project. Nathan, in turn, spent his days talking with small entrepreneurs, listening to their stories, and helping them develop viable business plans. One night, about 2 months after their arrival, Nathan and Emily were sitting on the small balcony of their apartment, watching the sunset over the city. "You know," Nathan said, breaking a comfortable silence, "I've never felt so fulfilled in my life. Seeing the direct impact we're having, the success stories that are already beginning to emerge, it's incredible." Emily smiled, squeezing his hand. "I know. It's wonderful to see how you've flourished here, Nathan. You've found your purpose." Nathan turned to her, his eyes shining with emotion. "And all this thanks to you, Emily. You showed me a world beyond the one I lived in, gave me courage to follow my heart." Emily felt tears forming in her eyes. "We transformed together, Nathan, and I couldn't be happier about it." As they kissed under the orange sky of Miami, Emily and Nathan felt that they had found not only each other, but also themselves in this unexpected journey. However, as life always has a way of surprising us, they didn't know that new challenges and crucial decisions awaited them in the following months, tests that would put to the test not only their love, but also their newly discovered values and dreams. Nathan's microcredit project was flourishing in the Miami community. Small businesses were beginning to prosper, from a lady who expanded her taco stand to a young man who started a local delivery service. Emily, in turn, had fallen in love with volunteer work with the children, seeing in them a potential that often went unnoticed. On a particularly hot afternoon, Nathan arrived home with a gleam of excitement in his eyes that Emily knew well. "Emily, you won't believe it," exclaimed, barely able to contain his excitement. "I received a call from an international NGO. They heard about our project here and want to expand to other communities in the United States." Emily hugged Nathan, sharing his joy. "That's incredible. Love, your work is being recognized." Nathan nodded, but there was a shadow of concern in his eyes. "It's an incredible opportunity, but they want me to lead the expansion. That would mean more travel, maybe even moving to other cities periodically." Emily's smile faltered for a moment. She thought of her mother in New York, the college she had put on pause, the job that awaited her. But then she looked at Nathan, saw the passion in his eyes, and remembered how both had grown in recent months. "Well," she said, taking a deep breath, "it seems we have some important decisions to make." The following days were filled with long conversations and deep reflections. Emily called her mother, explaining the situation. "My daughter," Mrs. Patricia said, her voice laden with emotion, "you need to follow your heart. I know you're making a difference there, and that fills me with pride." With tears in her eyes, Emily made her decision. She contacted the university and managed to transfer her course to a distance learning program, allowing her to continue her studies while traveling. When she shared her decision with Nathan, he hugged her tightly, tears of gratitude in his eyes. "I promise we'll make this work," he whispered. The following months were an emotional roller coaster and experiences. Nathan and Emily traveled to communities in different states, from small towns in rural Texas to fishing villages on the coast of Oregon. In each place they faced new challenges, met inspiring people, and left a legacy of hope and opportunity. However, life on the road also brought its difficulties. There were nights when Emily felt exhausted and homesick. Nathan at times felt the weight of responsibility on his shoulders, questioning whether he was really making a difference. It was during one of these difficult nights, in a small hotel in rural Tennessee, that Emily made a discovery that would change everything. "Nathan," she called, her voice trembling, "I think I'm pregnant." The silence that followed was deafening. Nathan looked at Emily, his eyes wide with surprise. Then slowly a smile began to form on his face. "A baby," he whispered, as if fearing that speaking louder would make the news disappear. "We're going to have a baby." Emily nodded, tears streaming down her cheeks. "I took the test today. We still need to confirm with the doctor, but yes, it seems so." Nathan hugged her, laughing and crying at the same time. "This is wow, Emily, we're going to be parents." The initial joy, however, soon gave way to practical concerns. How would they continue their itinerant work with a baby on the way? Would it be fair to raise a child in these conditions? Maybe it's time for us to settle somewhere, Nathan suggested, his voice mixing hope and apprehension. Emily agreed. But where? New York? Miami? Or maybe some completely new place? The question hung in the air, laden with possibilities and uncertainties. They knew that the decision they made now would affect not only their lives, but also that of the little being who was on the way. In the weeks that followed, as they continued their work, Nathan and Emily pondered their options. They talked to the NGO, explaining the situation, and to their relief received full support. "You've transformed lives all over the United States," said the NGO director. "Now, it's time for you to choose where you want to put down roots and continue this work in a more permanent way." After much reflection, an idea began to form. Why not combine the best of both worlds? They could establish a base in New York, close to Emily's family, but continue working with underprivileged communities in the city's periphery. The idea quickly gained strength. Nathan began making plans to adapt the microcredit project to the urban context of New York, while Emily dreamed of creating a community center that would offer education and support for underprivileged families. When they finally shared the news of the pregnancy and their plans with their families, they were received with a wave of love and support. Even Nathan's father, who had initially been skeptical about his son's career change, expressed his pride and offered help to establish the new initiative in New York. As they prepared for this new phase of their lives, Emily and Nathan reflected on the incredible journey they had traveled. From a casual encounter on a crowded bus to a partnership that was about to bring a new life into the world, they had overcome prejudices, family expectations, and their own fears. "Who would have thought," Emily whispered one night, her hand resting on her growing belly, "that tired waitress and the lost air would end up here?" Nathan kissed her softly. "I think deep down we always knew we were destined for something special together." As they approached the end of their adventure across the United States and prepared to return to New York, Emily and Nathan felt a mixture of nostalgia and expectation. The future was uncertain, but they were ready to face it together, with a love strengthened by shared experiences and a clear purpose to make a difference in the world, one day at a time. The return to New York was a whirlwind of emotions and activities for Emily and Nathan. With the pregnancy advancing, they had a lot to organize in a short time. Finding a place to live that could accommodate not only them, but also the future community center they planned, was the first challenge. After weeks of searching, they finally found the perfect place, an old house in a neighborhood on the outskirts of New York. The property needed renovations, but it had enough space to be both a home and a workplace. "It's perfect," Emily said, looking around the empty space, her imagination already filling the rooms with furniture and future projects. Nathan agreed, hugging her from behind, his hands resting on Emily's 5-month pregnant belly. "Our home, our work, our family, everything in one place." The following weeks were a race against time. While Nathan oversaw the renovations and began establishing contacts for the microcredit project in the region, Emily divided her time between prenatal consultations, finishing her distance studies, and planning the community center. One afternoon, while organizing what would be the project office, Emily found an old photo among the boxes. In it, a tired young waitress smiled shyly next to an elegant young man in front of a coffee shop. "Remember this day?" she asked, showing the photo to Nathan. He took the photograph, a nostalgic smile on his face. "How could I forget? It's when everything really began." Emily approached, looking at the image. "Look at us. So young, so different." Nathan hugged her. "Different, yes, but the essence is still the same. Two young people wanting to make a difference, even without knowing exactly how." As the due date approached, anxiety and expectation grew. The community center was almost ready to open its doors, and Nathan's microcredit project had already begun serving the first local entrepreneurs. It was on a quiet Sunday night, when Emily and Nathan were relaxing after a long day of work, that the first contractions began. "Nathan," Emily called, her voice a mixture of excitement and fear, "I think it's time." The following hours were a confusion of emotions. The rush to the hospital, hasty calls to family and friends, the anxious wait in the delivery room. Nathan held Emily's hand firmly, whispering words of encouragement as she faced the pains of childbirth. Finally, after what seemed like an eternity, a baby's cry filled the room. "It's a girl," announced the doctor, placing the small bundle in Emily's arms. Tears streamed down both their faces as they looked at their daughter for the first time. She was perfect, an adorable mixture of the two, with Emily's eyes and Nathan's chin. "Welcome to the world, Sophia," Nathan whispered, gently kissing his daughter's forehead. The days that followed were an emotional roller coaster. The joy of being parents mixed with the fatigue of sleepless nights and the anxiety of caring for such a small and fragile being. But amid all this, Emily and Nathan did not lose sight of their goals. With the support of friends and family, they managed to balance caring for Sophia and working at the community center. 1 month after Sophia's birth, the center finally opened its doors to the community. Seeing the space full of life, with children participating in tutoring classes, mothers learning new skills, and local entrepreneurs receiving guidance, filled Emily and Nathan's hearts with pride and gratitude. On a quiet afternoon, while Sophia slept in her improvised crib in the office, Emily found Nathan looking out the window at the children playing in the center's courtyard. "What are you thinking about?" she asked, joining him. Nathan smiled, pulling her close. "About how we got here, about all the people we've helped and will still help, about Sophia growing up in this environment, learning from an early age the importance of caring for others." Emily nodded, feeling a wave of emotion. "It's amazing, isn't it? How everything fell into place, how that casual encounter on the bus brought us here." "You know," Nathan said, his tone thoughtful, "I think it wasn't casual. I think it was our destiny. To meet, to challenge each other, and to grow together." Emily laughed softly. "Since when do you believe in destiny?" Nathan kissed her softly. "Since I met you." The soft sound of Sophia stirring in the crib caught their attention. Together they went to their daughter, who was opening her curious eyes to the world. Looking at Sophia, at Nathan, and at the center around her, Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment. They had faced challenges, overcome prejudices and expectations, and in the process not only found each other, but also their purpose in life. The future still held many challenges and uncertainties, but Emily and Nathan knew that together they could face anything. With Sophia as their inspiration and the desire to make a difference as their compass, they were ready for the next chapter of their journey, eager to see what other surprises and adventures life had in store for them. 5 years had passed since the opening of the community center and the birth of Sophia. What began as a small project in a New York neighborhood had transformed into a success model, replicated in several other communities around the city and even in other states. On a sunny Saturday morning, Emily woke up to the sound of laughter coming from the backyard. She got up and went to the window, smiling as she saw Nathan playing with Sophia, now a smart and curious 5-year-old girl, and with Jacob, the 2-year-old little brother who had arrived to complete the family. Coming down the stairs, Emily passed through the corridor filled with photos that told their story. The day of her graduation in law, the inauguration of the community center, the birth of the children, and countless moments captured with the families they had helped over the years. Upon arriving in the kitchen, Emily found Mrs. Patricia preparing breakfast. Her mother, now recovered from the illness that afflicted her years ago, was a constant and loving presence in the family's life. "Good morning, Mum," Emily said, kissing Mrs. Patricia's cheek. "Good morning, my dear," replied the lady with a warm smile. "Are the children already excited for today's event?" Emily nodded, feeling a mixture of pride and nervousness. Today was a special day. The community center was completing 5 years, and they had planned a big celebration with the entire community. Outside, Nathan came in with the children, all laughing and breathless from playing. "Mommy!" Sophia exclaimed, running to hug Emily. "Daddy said there's going to be a big party today, is it true?" Emily smiled, hugging her daughter. "It's true, my love. Today we're going to celebrate all the amazing work we've done in the last 5 years. The rest of the morning was a rush of final preparations. Volunteers arrived to help, decorations were hung, and the aroma of food being prepared filled the air. Shortly before noon, guests began to arrive. Families who had been helped by the center, local entrepreneurs who had prospered thanks to the microcredit program, children who participated in the tutoring classes, all came to celebrate. To Emily and Nathan's surprise, among the guests were also Nathan's parents. Over the years, their relationship had improved significantly. Mr. and Mrs. Harrison, initially skeptical about their son's choices, were now enthusiastic supporters of the couple's work. When it was time for the speeches, Nathan climbed onto the small improvised stage with Emily at his side. 5 years ago, he began, his voice laden with emotion, "Emily and I had a dream of making a difference, of creating opportunities where before there was only hopelessness. Looking at all of you today, I see that this dream has become a reality, but in a much bigger way than we ever imagined." Emily took the microphone, continuing, "Each one of you here has a story of overcoming, of courage, of perseverance. You are the real reason why we are here today. This center, this work, is as much yours as it is ours." As they spoke, Emily couldn't help but reflect on the journey that had brought them there. From a casual encounter on a crowded bus to this moment, surrounded by a community they had helped transform. She looked at Nathan, seeing in his eyes the same love and determination that had captivated her years ago. After the speeches, the celebration continued with music, food, and much joy. Emily and Nathan circulated among the guests, listening to success stories, receiving thanks, and sharing hugs. At the end of the afternoon, when the party was beginning to wind down, Emily found a moment of quietude. She observed Sophia and Jacob playing with other children, saw Nathan animatedly talking with a group of local entrepreneurs, noticed her mother laughing with some ladies from the neighborhood. At that moment, Emily felt a deep sense of fulfillment and gratitude. They had faced many challenges along the way, prejudices, doubts, moments of uncertainty, but never lost sight of what really mattered, their love for each other and the desire to make a difference in the world. Nathan approached, putting an arm around her waist. "What are you thinking about?" he asked softly. Emily smiled, leaning against him. "About how blessed we are, about how that tired waitress and that lost heir found their way together." Nathan kissed her tenderly. "And this is just the beginning, my love. We have much more to do, many more lives to touch." As the sun set on the New York horizon, painting the sky with shades of orange and pink, Emily and Nathan remained embraced, their hearts full of love, gratitude, and hope for the future. They knew that no matter what life had in store for them, they would face it together, as they had always done since that first encounter on the bus. And so, with the sound of laughter and music in the background, with the warmth of the community they had helped build around them, Emily and Nathan closed another chapter of their story, eager and ready for the next pages that were yet to come. At this moment, dear listeners, we address you. Just like Sophia, we know that you too are eager for more stories that touch the heart and inspire. And that's why we've prepared a special playlist with equally captivating narratives waiting to be discovered. You can find it by clicking on the link to the left. If Emily and Nathan's journey moved you, don't forget to subscribe to our channel and give this video a like. Every day, we bring unique stories that explore the complexities of life, love, and personal transformation. And remember, just as Emily and Nathan built a community, we're also building ours here. Share your own stories and reflections in the comments. Who knows, maybe the next narrative we tell will be inspired by you. Don't miss our upcoming content. After all, each story is a new beginning, a new chance for us to connect and grow together. Until next time, and remember, every great journey begins with a simple encounter.